Hello everyone, welcome to another race here with Mo Allen. This race is a Zwift Epic Race on the Glyph Heights route in Watopia. It's 34 kilometers, one lap, 618 total meters. This is an interesting route because it has multiple climbs strung together. I figured it would be a good challenge. I let my coach know that I was planning to do this. Yesterday I let him know that I was planning to do this, and he said he would race along with me, so he's in this group too, along with another athlete from the watts per kilogram coaching team or racing team. You can find the link to his coaching down below in the description. So in the recon, I knew that this race would start flat up until the Mayan mountainside KOM, I believe. Also interesting part of this is that the Mayan mountainside KOM is part of the lead-in, which I hadn't noticed. I did do recon on this route, not by riding it, but by watching someone else do this exact race. So I was aware of what to expect. You can see my coach texting me there through the Zwift companion app. So I knew what to expect in terms of it being flat until that Mayan mountainside, and then the Mayan mountainside being part of the lead-in, and basically continuing on to the Itza KOM after that. The unique part of this is that after the Itza KOM, you get a little bit of a break, but then it goes right into the second half of the grade climb. And then you get a short break again before it goes to the top portion of the Epic KOM. It's a really interesting route. And it actually ends with a bit of a climb as well. Good challenge, very tough race, and here we go, starting the climb for the Mayan mountainside. So strategy here is to stay with the front as long as I could with a group this big, 100 riders, not only the size, but also the fact that this is an E category race, or in Zwift Racing Score terms, it's from 0 to 1,000, so it basically includes all categories. So you really didn't know which riders you would be competing at, like were similar power to you. So it's kind of hard to gauge. I had actually watched another video that had a mixed pen start. That's different than this. This is just one pen, all E, but they had a mixed pen start, and also were commenting on the fact that they couldn't know who they were competing against. But in the mini map at the top right, the people in their pen, the little dots on the mini map, like right now all the dots are like purplish color because that's the color for the E category. But in their race, the dots were actually different colors depending on the category. So green is for B, and they could see that there were green dots for the B riders. It would have been, I didn't think about that at all during this race, but watching this back now, I am looking at the dots, and maybe I'll keep an eye on that in the future. Here we go. Partway up the climb here. My coach is D corridor there, 2 riders ahead of me right now. Now he's the rider right in front of me in the blue. So I'm just trying to mark his wheel going up these climbs. He let me know later on, and you'll probably see it in the messaging, that he wasn't feeling under the weather. So at a certain point, I didn't hold his wheel. There was one time where you'll see that on the grade, I believe, I get a gap on him, but then I scale it back because I was pushing a little too hard, and he came back with the group, which was nice. So it's always nice to have that support. So here you can see I'm climbing pretty well, 312 watt average after 12 minutes. At the end, this was a really high power ride for me for being close to an hour. There were 20 minutes in here somewhere where I actually put out power only a few watts, I think 3 watts less than my FTP, which was surprising actually. And doing the ride, watching it back now and doing the ride it's interesting. When I was riding, I felt like I was, not that I'm like stable, and yeah, I bob my head a lot when I am doing these hard efforts, but I felt really a lot. It seemed like I felt more gassed and out of control in terms of my bike movement than I actually was watching it back, which is an interesting thing. There we go, climbing the Mayan mountainside, 3:45, 3 minutes 45 seconds, and you can see a pretty good effort there. So here we get a little bit of a break before we head on up to the ITSA KOM. You can see my coach telling me there to draft, make sure I conserve energy. I will often be too much in front of the group, and especially for a ride like this with so many climbs strung together and me not being a climber. My rider weight is 95 kilograms in Zwift, so I'm a tall and heavy rider relatively. I really need to work on and continue to make sure that I don't burn myself out too much on the climbs. My fitness is coming up in the last couple of months, so I'm able to do these climbs at pretty high power these days, which is nice, as evidenced by the fact that I did 20 minutes during this close to my FTP. My FTP, by the way, is like the raw watts for the FTP is something like 352. And if you would have seen the YouTube thumbnail, you would have seen that I did for 20 minutes 349. Here we go, going up the ITSA KOM now. I think here is where Dan and I start to separate a bit. I wonder something, because I was feeling pretty good here, 174 beats a minute, and 318 watt average after 15 minutes, but I was feeling like fairly good, and when I see like little gaps like this, I had it in my mind that maybe I would try to chase some wheels, which I think was ill-advised in a couple of scenarios, but overall I think the strategy worked pretty well. So here we are coming up on the sort of second part of the ITSA KOM in a group of several riders here, still with my coach, which is nice. Trying to stay in the draft a bit, which I've mentioned it in previous videos, but it's a luxury for me to be able to draft on climbs because I'm usually dropped pretty soon. So we're in a group of, from like 32nd to 42nd place or something with the 10 or so riders in this group. And again, it's hard to know what the level of at the time we were riding, what the level of riders ahead of us was. So it's very good to have had Dan to follow here. So here you can see it gets strung out on this flatter section here before we get to the last part of the climb. And I figured on the flat sections, my rider weight, so you see Dan there telling me to follow them. My rider weight, I figured I'd pull Dan a little bit. I actually wasn't feeling good enough here to actually bridge this gap. I didn't want to, so I just stayed seated and put in sort of an effort. I don't remember if I actually get back to that group. I don't think I do. So here I didn't, like, I could have pushed to try to stay, like, get up to the riders ahead. J Knob there, S A F J and Huckfeld. So Dan's now telling me to draft once she sees that I'm not making it up to those two riders, I assume. So group kind of coming back together here. Again, I don't know if we get back to those two riders ahead. They're doing 4.5, 5.3 watts a kilogram. A little more than our group is doing. I think they get away from us, but still a relatively large group here. So here we are coming in the last part of the climb, steeper part. You can see Dan's got a bit of a gap on me. I wasn't strong enough at this point. Well, not that I wasn't strong enough. My limit at this point where I wanted to be, knowing that I still had 21 kilometers to go, was not to necessarily bridge these gaps just because the small gap opened. I had to stay with myself. It's relatively hard effort here. You can see I turned the graph off on the screen. I will do that sometimes just so as not to have that graph as an anchor. Sometimes, if you see I popped the feather up here going up into the end. Sometimes having that graph there, if it's showing, you know, red for a while and then I drop back to orange or yellow, it can be a little bit of a mental challenge to see that drop. So sometimes I just turn it off and focus on the riders around me. I didn't have a watt target for this climb, so I was just going sort of by feel, seeing where Dan was. Nice to see that we both finished at the same time here. So we're in a group of 5 as we crest this. Two riders behind, with one rider 11 seconds up ahead there. Well, actually one rider 3 seconds ahead, and then a couple further up than that. So here, there's that little break that I mentioned before we go right up into the next effort here, which is the second half plus a bit more, starting at the 5th segment of the grade climb. So this one was an interesting one. I could have, so you see me here in front of Dan, and he's saying if I feel good, go with them. But draft, I felt okay, but not okay enough to stay with those riders. You never know, right? Again, you don't know exactly who you're competing against. So I did stay ahead of Dan here, but I also could have dropped back and sat on his wheel, although he wasn't feeling well. I think all in all, this part was okay, but you can see me here at 350, 380 watts. So for the ride, 325 watt average after 23 minutes. I'll start to drop that back because we did that first segment there, and we've got 5 more segments to go in this grade climb. And again, after this, we still have part of the Epic KOM to climb. So I decided at a certain point that I'm gonna scale it back here. And so I'm just paying attention to the riders around, see if I can keep those 2 riders or any riders in front, at least in a little bit of contact. We have a group of, we got 1, 2, 3, 4 riders here, including me. So there's Dan saying on my wheel, and I think I start to drop back. There's a little bit of yo-yoing here. You'll see me let up off the watts here to let Dan go past, but then I try to anticipate him coming and go and speed up right there. So that was a bit of a mistake. I didn't time that very well. So I let him go past again and just trying to sit on his wheel here as we have now 4 more segments left of this grade climb. So you can see here, standing up, 56 RPM, kind of grinding out the power. Still high power, relatively, but kind of feeling it. I'm feeling it at this point. Like the legs are feeling okay. The last few rides, I could really feel it in like my quads, but that wasn't the case with this ride. But this section here is tough. Seeing that solid red section as you go up is a good mental challenge. So I'm just trying to stay within myself here. Grinding on the pedals here at 55 RPM. After 26 minutes, 327 watt average. Again, my FTP, the raw FTP number being 350 something. The actual FTP, 95% of that is like 323 or something like that. High power here after 26 minutes for me. And there you can see Dan telling me to go. So here I'm not feeling that like strong enough to put in any effort, and you see me dialing back the watts here, 315, 330, not that 350 or 380 that I had started this climb with. So I'm just watching Dan there and seeing, because, you know, he's obviously not feeling that strong at this point, but neither am I. So I, you know, relatively, again, it was a good effort for me, this ride. I have no complaints about my effort, but not strong enough to stay on the wheels of every single person here. So here, as we come towards the end, we're in the second half of the penultimate, the segment before the last on this grade climb. I'd gotten a 3-second gap on Dan, but now Dan's coming back to me, which is nice. Just trying to stay within myself again, knowing that we have a whole other top portion of the epic to climb. So just trying to make sure that I stay on the power here. At this point, I'm sure I was afraid, you know, climbing this at 60 RPM I don't think is ideal, but I'm sure that I was afraid to switch to an easier gear and increase the cadence. One of my weaknesses is just that. Once I do that, it is sometimes difficult to put the power back down. I just stay in that easy gear, and those harder gears just become like elusive. If I go down there, I'm gonna be, you know, grinding lower than even this 56 RPM. At least that's what happens sometimes. So here I'm just staying on it. I know I've got only a little portion left, and get to the top, try to get some rest, rest on the flatter parts, assess who's around, how Dan's feeling, and just see what kind of effort I'm gonna do up the epic. So here we go, another KOM done. Finishing it again with Dan, which is nice. Now just getting a little bit of a rest before this epic effort. Hit a button by accident there while I was trying to turn the graph back on and see what kind of effort I did. So at this point, there are 3 riders in this small group, 2 riders 6 and 8 seconds behind, and a group of riders up front. At this point, I'm just getting ready to put hopefully similar power down once the gradient increases on this epic climb, and just assess and see where we are. I'm not in a position to chase anyone down, but this rider with us can do so. I would try to not let them get away if I can help it. So you'll see me react to them, sometimes going in front. Other than that, keeping an eye on Dan, seeing if he's going to stay. We have a rider coming up behind us, 2 seconds. And here we go on the first little incline. This is a test just to see how I'm feeling after that little break and that effort on the grade, and to see how the riders we're with are reacting. So my nutrition for this ride, during the warm-up, I had a 15-minute warm-up or 17-minute warm-up, I believe. And so at the start of that warm-up, I drank my usual 2 scoops of infinite carbohydrate blend nutrition and 20 ounces of cold water. Just a powdered blend shaken up into water. And then I have 2 bottles. I have a bottle of water, which is in the bottle cage on my bike. So when you see me reach down and get that, that's water. And to the right side there is a bottle of 1 scoop of infinite, just to get a little bit of that sweet flavor and some extra energy. I think probably for the length of this ride, there I go drinking that bottle. That is likely overkill, but for me, I decided to do it. Again, just a little bit of a mental boost, taste a little something sweet. So here we are in the final part of the Epic. 4 riders with us, including myself. Relatively controlled effort up the Epic here, this top part of the Epic. I know that my rider weight will propel me down the hills, probably past these, at least I'll say this, I will be able to go down the descent a lot quicker with less effort than these riders will. So if I'm looking to gain anything, I could gain it here. I'm not actually, we have another rider there joining us. I'm not actually looking to, I wasn't at least looking to gain any advantage here on the descent necessarily, but I was just gonna, you know, give it some good pushes and coast down. I did want to be out away from any of the groups, so be in front so that I could get the super tuck. I guess I'd heard, so there you see Dan saying that he's been under the weather, so kind of go on my own here. I had heard that the fact that you couldn't super tuck in a group was a bug, and a bug that had been fixed, but I didn't verify that, either of those things myself. So I knew that once it came time, so here we go on these gradients, once it came time, I knew I wanted to get out front just to make sure that I got the super tuck, not being in a group. So there you could see, even though I was doing everything that was required in terms of speed and gradient to be in a super tuck, it wasn't tucking. So here I am going out in front and just getting that tuck. So the group's all together here. Dan dropped back. I shouldn't say they're all together because two riders are off the back, but you can see what kind of advantage I'm able to get here as I increase the gap to the riders behind just by super tucking. And they don't ever make it back to me on this this descent. So once I see the kind of gap I was able to get, I put up the watts here just to hammer up this, and I plan to super tuck again down the other side and see whether or not that gap increases, stays the same, decreases, and then I'm going to assess there. If they're just coming back to me, then I would still do my super tucks and then just try to stay with that group. But if I'm blowing my gap out to them at this point, I'm wondering in my mind, I put the graph back on there. So we've got behind two riders in front of Dan, 7 and 12 seconds. Another rider behind Dan there, it's 18 seconds now. A couple riders behind that. Not huge gaps, but if I get to the bottom of this and those gaps keep increasing, then it's likely I would have, I was estimating 20 or 30 seconds on those riders. And in my mind, with a 12K to go here, I'm wondering, okay, because I on the recon, I knew that it was relatively, well, you go through the jungle a bit, which is never flat, but it was relatively flat until the last climb at the end. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe I try to just do a 10 kilometer-ish individual time trial effort and try to keep this group away. So that's my thought at this point. Again, keeping track of the gaps, 14 seconds to Can Do So now. About 8 seconds further back for the next riders. So I'm thinking it's possible, given the gaps that I'm putting here. I'm trying to make sure I just get all these super tucks that I can here. And once I get to the bottom, I'll assess and see how I'm feeling, and if I want to try to keep that group away or just sit up and stay with that group and try to beat them in a sprint maybe. Which might be ill-advised if it's up a mountain. So I wanted to take my advantage, which is on the descents and the flats, and take away any advantage they had on any of the hills in case they were lighter and better climbers than I, which is most often the case. So you can see here, this is where I decide I'm going to do it. I have 20 seconds on Can Do So, 31 seconds to the rider behind them, and got down in a TT position, and just hammering out a good cadence, making sure I breathe, and seeing how long. I got 10K to go, seeing how long I might be able to hold this effort. I was targeting, again, I was going by feel, not necessarily by watts, just trying to hammer out and see kind of what I thought I might be able to sustain until the last climb. And I was going to assess as I approached the last climb whether I need to dial it back to have some legs for the climb, or if I could actually increase it. I didn't think it was likely I would be able to increase it, but so here Canduso's putting in some digs. They were up over 4 watts there. Still 19 seconds back to them, so they're not getting any closer. It's not like I'm also blowing the lead out quickly, but I figure let me keep on it. So I was targeting over 300 watts at least. I was kind of also just looking at the graph and saying, all right, try to stay in the yellow. I don't know what number exactly is yellow for me, but I was targeting that for this little effort. So I was resigned to, or I had decided to try a TT effort and keep them away. So you see, I got another 2 seconds on Canduso there since I decided to do this. 3 seconds now. So I'm like, all right, if I'm feeling good, I know everyone's, hurting, but if I'm able to do this on the climbs, I also didn't want to let up and let them see any moments of weakness in my numbers in the rider list there. So keeping on the watts, I noticed the Canduso there going up over 4 watts. They could also just be competing with Fat Lad, who has come up as part of the group now. So as we go through that green gate there, I know that the Mayan mountainside climb is coming up soon, and I also see that I've picked off a rider up front, which was nice, a Carlton there, who I did specifically put in an effort to go past them, and again not let them, so I increased the watts as I passed them, just to not let them see that I was sitting up or think that it would be easy to stay with me. So the gap back to Canduso's group with Fat Lad and Volchisek is 43 seconds now. So now I'm wondering, as we approach this, we're going to make a left here and go up the climb. I'm wondering, will I have the legs to keep them away? I'm also looking ahead, maybe RS ahead of me, 18 seconds there. See if I could pick them off, but they're at 4 watts a kilogram. Likely I'm not going to be putting that out for the start of this climb and gain on them, so I do keep my eye on them, but really it's about seeing whether or not Carlton behind me is gonna put in a surge up the climb, and really about whether or not Canduso's group behind, if I can keep them away and just finish in this 38th place here. So with 1.3 kilometers to go, I can see that Canduso's group has gained 8 seconds on me, so that's a little concerning. So again, I'm just trying to stay on the watts here, keep an eye on that group. I know that if I keep relatively consistent here, that I'm likely to be able to, or at least in my mind at this point, I'm thinking, okay, is this going to be like some kind of sprint finish where they get me right at the line? Honestly, I think that's what I was thinking. But as time goes on, it becomes obvious that, especially with 1K to go here, that I'm gonna keep them away. So with half a kilometer to go, Canduso's group did gain a couple of seconds on me, but not enough to bridge up to me before the end. So now it's just about keeping the power on, seeing if I can finish this out strong. I know that once we make this left up here, there's going to be another right, and then it'll be over. So I'm just, now you can see me increasing the watts. I've decided here I'm just gonna try to wind up until the end. I'll switch into my harder gear at some point here. And this was a good finish. I was happy with the TT effort as well. Felt pretty controlled, which was nice, able to keep the group away. The fact that this is an all-category race is a little unfortunate, I think, because I don't really know how I placed amongst the other riders in my I guess that's not true on the Zwift companion app. In the race results, at least for Zwift, you can see the Zwift Racing Score. So got the route badge here as well, but on the Zwift results, you can see the Zwift Racing Score of the riders around you. So there's the Zwift Power results, and there's the Zwift race results there. So overall, really good effort. I was surprised to see that I had put a 20-minute power right around my FTP, which was nice. So good climbs, good efforts, good teamwork. I appreciate Dan as always. Again, if you want run specific, bike specific, swim specific, or triathlon specific, or any combination of those coaching, Dan at Watts per Kilogram Coaching is a great option. So the website is in the description. Check them out. And I appreciate you all watching. And you'll see my power here. Critical power for an hour was pretty close to my best, 20-ish, 25 watts, I think, off my personal best, which isn't bad. So felt pretty good. Appreciate you all watching. Like the video, subscribe if you feel so inclined, turn on notifications to know when I upload more, and I will see you on the next ride.